Deleted session, October 29, 1977. Good evening. Now give us a moment. Let me try again to explain a few points, mainly concerning Ruber's condition. Until the very recent past, his body in a way was over-disciplined, so that it maintained a fairly stable but rigid framework. Certain postures were allowed, certain motions, and not others, as if Ruber operated his body as though it were a puppet, keeping it in certain ritualized motions by holding the strings too tightly. In this case, the strings would be the muscles and the tendons. The body is not a puppet, however, so the tightened ligaments and muscles restrained the joints to some extent, all of them. Little by little, they demanded this lubrication, for use did not stimulate it. Each muscle, ligament, and joint was to some extent affected, drawn too tightly. The head could move, and the neck in certain positions. The eyes looked forward, moving with the head's motion. The eyes did not roll easily, but since no attempt was made to roll them, the restriction was not noted, except when Ruber tried to roll his eyes when they were closed. For an exercise once or twice, the eyes were not held rigid. They moved sideways, but in very limited fashions. The rigidity was largely set up in the head and neck regions, arms and shoulders, thus necessitating the bending of the knees and so forth. Improvements could occur, and did, but at one time or another, the portions of the body had to begin to break away from the overall black picture. Spontaneity had to be allowed if any normality of motion was to occur. You did not want a body in the same position, simply moving faster, for example. Therefore, in the late months, the various ligaments and muscles and the tendons began to loosen. As you know, the overall dependability of the old posture could not be relied upon anymore. That in itself was a definite step forward. Our friend Frank Longwell verified the loosening of the ligaments in the knees. They move now constantly, trying out their new freedoms, and as they do, they stimulate other portions of the body to one extent or another. The same applies to the right foot, particularly as new ligaments loosen. The neck ligaments, as mentioned, and the jaw area were particularly involved. Ruber had some habits he was only vaguely aware of. He used to close his eyes tightly, often, when he sat down, tensing the knee ligaments and the eyes at the same time. This was because the knees hurt. In another learned response, he did not look sideways. When he reached for something to the side, he reached like this. His eyes did not follow the motion. In other ways, he did not use his eyes to follow sideward motions, and often turned the entire head area when he executed any movement he felt was difficult. As the knee and the neck areas began, as they are, spontaneous motions, unused activities of the eyes also began to show. They have not been synchronized. Part of this is because all the small ligaments in both the head and the knee areas are released, or are being released. They are constantly exercising themselves, but are not themselves working smoothly. Added to this is the fact that joints now require lubrication. His head feels fuller, and other portions of the body also. These changes mean that the pressure in his ears and head changes. The lubrication allows more spontaneous action on the part of the joints, ligaments, and muscles. To some extent, the change in pressure accounts for the eye's protuberance, so that they have plenty of moisture and do not become dry as the eye muscles and other portions of the eyes exercise their new activity. Give us a moment. To some extent, this has allowed the eyes to read now and then without glasses. The alterations in Ruber's knees, however, send various messages to the brain, for as he walks, due to the present activity, his position is not constant. He is not always so many feet, for example, from the floor. As the ligaments and muscles in the legs activate, they are learning to work together under entirely different conditions. The messages do not all agree then, as they would in a smooth locomotion, even a rigid smooth locomotion. The varying pressure in the joints is also involved here, and all of these issues are connected with depth perception. The body, of course, knows your situations and the demands put upon it. If Ruber were a traffic cop, other methods would have been taken so that he would not get run down. For example, I understand your concern, and perhaps I should not comment, but if some of my suggestions had been followed, you would have had quicker results with the eyes. I know you both fairly well, however, so I usually give you a number of suggestions toward action, so that at least some of them will be followed. In your joint creativity, you sustained each other's faith through the years. You gave your desire freedom, and you believed in it. That belief dissolved impediments that lay in your way, even some you did not recognize. Attitudes, for example, that you had but did not see were detrimental. You were not driven by fear, but desire, not by doubts, but by hope and faith. You did not project failure into the future, but success. Overall, these last few weeks, you have done well. Ruber has noted sometimes a worry and lack of faith, and so have you. But those times are now becoming the exception rather than the rule, and before then, the opposite applied. On occasions that you barely recognize, one of you has been in a doubting mood, while the other was in a mood of faith. Picked this up and was able to change the situation also for the one who felt doubtful. Both of you at different times operated that way for the other, scarcely noticing. It is Ruber, of course, whose moods are more noticeable, but he still should feel free to discuss his fears with you when he is in a poor mood. For even if you are not filled with faith at such times, you can usually recognize that his fears are exaggerated rather than realistic, even in those terms. Your statements, Rob noted, of suggestion read frameworks 1 and 2. They said are excellent and should be read over. If your goals fit in with overall natural purposes, you can do anything at all with your consciousness while still maintaining ordinary contact in framework 1. I suggest that perhaps once a day in as creatively playful a way as possible, without trying too hard, in naps or when you are reading your statements or any time, to simply try to get the feeling of framework 2. When you were working with sales the other day, you felt that contact, Rob noted, as described. They said you felt motion happening. Sometimes, perhaps, when Ruber is listening to music he likes on his radio, let him try to get the feeling of framework 2 again, without trying too hard, and imagine himself dancing any way he likes. This does not have to be long or involved. Give us a moment. If his niece could see, they would also be disoriented. Rob noted a great line. They said the fear of the situation does not help, of course, for any such tension holds back the relaxation process, and the eyes are relaxing, and the neck and the tendons, for example, letting go. Often at times, when his vision is disorienting, the activity, however, also results in a better focus in reading that is coming about. Usually it is changes in focus that are involved. He will be reading fairly well, then perhaps look up at the television set. Following motion of the screen, and then it will take time again, a few moments, perhaps, before he reads well again, or he will be reading well and look up, eyes roaming about the room, and then become disoriented visually. Hot water on the knees will help, as does his new practice of hot water on the forehead. Sitting on a stool, he could apply hot water on the knees while letting them drop down. You are beginning to awaken your faith, but still afraid to believe. Rupert has had some excellent moments of such faith, however, and those moments add up. It is highly important that you continue thinking creatively in terms of his condition, of not being afraid to believe that he can indeed walk normally. He must avoid contradictions, while at the same time not putting his normal walking into some distant future. You must believe that in Framework 2, all of the necessary procedures involved in his normal walking are now happening, and believe that improvements and obvious states of that process will occur in Framework 1. The evidence will appear in Framework 1 as you believe it. At the same time, however, you must not be ever checking Rupert's condition for the evidence. The inspiration for a book can come in a moment, though for months nothing may appear. So Rupert's condition may show no physical improvements of the kind you are looking for, may not, while suddenly the work that has been done unconsciously during that period can suddenly emerge, seemingly from nowhere, as a spectacular improvement. If you do not have faith in the meantime, however, you hamper that kind of development. On the other hand, improvements may be gradual but steady. The whole point is to trust that they will come, in whatever fashion, but in a reasonable time, without making other qualifications. Any other ways that Rupert can increase his daily enjoyment will also help. The cooking efforts, the dishes, have benefits that do not show beside those you are familiar with. If you do follow my suggestions concerning Framework 2, given this evening, your own experiences will lead to other creative ideas involving Rupert's condition, sales, and the creative activity. I will end the session or take a break as you prefer. Rossett will take the break, thank you. They said, as a child, you are immersed in Framework 2. Along the way, you are taught that it is unrealistic to have any kind of faith, unless physical evidence is behind it. But then, of course, you are not working with faith at all. You have both been afraid that Rupert would not return to normal flexibility, to have faith in that situation, for fear your hopes would be aroused and dashed. You did not free that desire. You gave it no expression. You did talk of improvements, but you saw them going toward no completed direction. Again, because your fears did not allow you to express or release that desire. Again, the more normal activities, as with the dishes, etc., that Rupert tries, the more he states his intent to do normal things, the more his attitude changes, the more flexible he becomes, the more freedom he allows himself. You must not be afraid to hope, for hope always leads to faith. The fact that you even send books to artists and art institutions shows that you have changed your attitudes in Framework 1, thereby opening resources in Framework 2 that did not exist, practically speaking, earlier. Many artists have strong psychic needs, whether or not they admit them. The seasoning book will have more effect on the people that you sent it to than they realize, or may be apparent at this time, because you are uniting two strong forces, the artistic and the creative ones. You should get some excellent responses, though some people will not want their names used. Rob noted, At that Seth would say that, as far as I know, neither of us have any conscious idea of trying to use the names of people who respond to the seasoning books. They said, you have made your first strong impression in Framework 2, however, in certain fashions, for it is the first time you have personally contacted people about these books in any concerted manner. That change of attitude is vastly important. The exercise I told Robert to do about dancing can also trigger responses on his part in ways now impossible to expect. All of the resources, the endless resources on Framework 2 are available to you, and you will use them in many areas, but you must trigger them through desire and intent, with the faith and belief that they are indeed available at your command, in the area in which you are interested. Before, for whatever reasons already given, you were each content with the status quo. You did not trigger the complete response, then. That is the secret. End of session. Except that you can also suggest that you become acquainted with or visit Framework 2 while in the dream state and remember the event. With your focus now, you should have decent results. Remember applying the creativity to Ruber's condition and to increasing daily enjoyment. A small note, you did not free your desire in terms of sales either. You wanted the books to go so far and no further because you did not trust your own abilities to handle the situation if the books did really well. My heartiest regards and a fond good evening. Ra said, thank you, Seth, and good night.